It was a quiet and sad morning when they found his body lying on the beach. His hands were tangled in his fishing net, and it looked like he had been holding onto it with all his strength. People gathered around and whispered that the sea must have pulled him in and swallowed him. Everyone said the sea could be dangerous like that. But soon, people started talking about something strange. They said they had seen him with a woman in the water. Not just any woman, but someone very special. This woman didn't have legs like the rest of us. Instead, she had a shiny tail, like a fish, but glittering and beautiful. When I first heard these stories, I thought they were made up. It sounded too crazy to believe. But I had seen part of what happened that night. Now I know the truth, and I want to tell you how it really went. The man they found was Dale. Everyone in the village knew him. Dale wasn't a fisherman by trade. He owned a small shop in our little town where people came to buy flour, sugar, candles, and all the small things they needed for their homes. He was known for being kind to everyone. When children visited his shop, he gave them candies, even if they didn't have money to buy anything else. People liked him, and that's why it was such a shock when he was found dead. But Dale had a habit. When the day ended and the sun went down, he would close his shop and take his small fishing boat out onto the water. He said it helped him think. People in the town thought it was strange, but they didn't mind. Dale wasn't married, and he didn't have anyone waiting for him at home, so he could spend his nights however he liked. One night, the moon was bright and round, and its light made the water look like silver. I had been walking near the cliffs that overlooked the bay. That's when I saw Dale's little boat gently rocking on the waves. There was a faint light coming from his lantern. I stopped and sat down on the rocks to watch. I don't know why, but something about that night felt special. I stayed quiet so no one would notice me. From where I sat, I could see Dale pulling on his fishing net. He looked like he was working very hard, pulling and tugging with all his strength. I thought maybe he had caught a big fish, the kind we don't see often anymore. But then I heard his voice. He shouted, "What is this?" His voice echoed across the quiet water, and I stayed hidden. I didn't want him to know I was watching. Dale kept pulling until something splashed onto the deck of his boat. I leaned forward to see better, and that's when I saw her. At first, I thought she was a young woman. She had long, shiny hair that flowed down her back, and her skin seemed to glow in the moonlight. But when I looked lower, I saw her tail. Instead of legs, she had a long tail covered in shimmering scales that caught the moonlight and sparkled with colors like gold and green. I couldn't believe my eyes. I rubbed them to make sure I wasn't dreaming. Dale looked just as surprised as I was. His hands were shaking as he tried to untangle her from his net. She didn't look scared. She just lay there, calm and still, watching him with big eyes that seemed curious and a little sad. Dale must have realized she was hurt because of his net. He pulled off his jacket and gently covered her. Then he helped her sit up and leaned her against the side of the boat. They stayed like that for a while, staring at each other. Neither of them spoke. It was like they were trying to figure out what to do next. I was too scared to move, so I just stayed hidden and watched from my spot on the cliffs. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Was she really a mermaid? The stories we heard about mermaids always said they were magical, but I never thought I would see one with my own eyes. My heart was beating fast, and I didn't know what would happen next. The next few days were strange. Dale's shop stayed closed, which never happened before. People in town started wondering what was wrong. Some of them thought he might be sick. Others thought he might be sad about something. Dale walked around with a small smile on his face, but it was different. It wasn't a normal smile. It was like he knew a secret, and he was keeping it all to himself. Nobody could figure out what had changed. At night, I kept a closer eye on him. I wanted to know what he was doing. I saw him go back to his boat and row it out into the bay. I decided to follow him this time. I stayed far behind and hid so he wouldn't see me. When he got to the middle of the bay, he stopped rowing and waited. It was very quiet. I started to think maybe nothing would happen. But then, she appeared. She came up from under the water, and her tail made little waves around her. I could see it glittering in the moonlight, just like before. She swam up to Dale's boat and rested her arms on the side. Dale looked at her and smiled. They started talking softly, but I couldn't hear what they were saying. From the way Dale looked at her, I could tell he was happy. Happier than I had ever seen him before. They spent hours like that, talking and laughing. It was like they were the only two people in the world. Night after night, they met in the same place. She started bringing him small gifts from the sea. Sometimes, it was shiny shells. Other times, it was smooth, colorful stones or tiny pearls. Dale kept everything she gave him in a little wooden box in his shop. He never showed the box to anyone. It was their secret. But even though they seemed happy, I could tell something was wrong. There was a sadness in the way they looked at each other. It was like they both knew their time together couldn't last forever. One night, everything changed. I had followed Dale to the bay again, staying hidden as usual. When the mermaid appeared, I noticed they were acting differently. Dale seemed upset. He was talking louder than normal, and his voice sounded angry and sad at the same time. "Why can't I go with you?" he shouted. His voice carried over the water, loud enough for me to hear. She shook her head, her long hair moving like waves in the wind. She looked just as sad as Dale, maybe even more. I guess that she was telling him he couldn't live in the sea with her. He didn't belong there, just like she didn't belong on land. It seemed like Dale didn't want to understand. He just wanted to be with her, no matter what. That's when Dale did something I never expected. He stepped out of his boat and into the water. My heart started pounding. What was he doing? He swam toward her, reaching out his arms like he was trying to hold her. She caught him, wrapping her arms around him. But she didn't look happy. She looked scared. Her voice was soft, but I heard her say, "Please, Dale. You have to go back." He didn't listen. He held onto her tighter and started sinking under the water. I wanted to scream, to run down and stop him, but I couldn't move. I just watched, frozen in place. The mermaid let out a scream that shook me to my core. Using all her strength, she pushed Dale back toward his boat. Somehow, he managed to grab onto it and climb back in. He was coughing and gasping for air, but he was alive. When he turned to look for her, she was gone. She had disappeared into the deep water. Dale sat in his boat for a long time, staring out at the waves, hoping she would come back. But she didn't. The next morning, Dale's boat drifted back to shore, but he wasn't in it. His body washed up on the beach later that day. After Dale's death, strange things began to happen. Shiny shells and bits of coral started washing up on the shore. Fishermen who hadn't caught anything in weeks suddenly found their nets full. It was like the sea was giving us gifts to make up for what had happened. But then, just as quickly as it started, everything stopped. The fish disappeared, and the sea grew quiet and empty. People in town began to whisper. They said the sea was angry, that it had lost someone it cared about. Some even blamed the mermaid for Dale's death. One fisherman, old Samuel, decided to do something about it. He rowed out into the bay one night, saying he was going to find her and make her pay. But he never came back. The town changed after that. People stopped going to the beach. The boat stayed tied up at the docks, and the water felt strange and lonely. But I couldn't forget about her. I went back to the cliffs one night, hoping to see her again. And I did. She was sitting on a rock near the shore, her tail curled around her like a blanket. She looked smaller than before, like she was carrying something heavy in her heart. I stepped closer, and she looked up at me with big, tearful eyes. "I never wanted to hurt him," she said. Her voice was soft and full of sadness. "I just wanted someone to talk to." Then, she slipped into the water and disappeared. I never saw her again. Years have passed now. The town is almost empty. Most people moved away after the fish stopped coming. But sometimes, on quiet nights, when the wind isn't blowing, I hear her singing. It's a sad song, slow and full of longing. It's like she's remembering Dale and the time they shared. The sea holds their story, even if no one else does. As the waves carry away the past, there's a lesson we can all learn from this tale. Sometimes, our deepest desires can lead us to make choices that harm us and those we care about. It's a reminder that we must understand our limits and respect what can't be changed or controlled. Only then can we truly find peace, both within ourselves and with the world around us. Thank you so much for watching this story. I hope it touched your heart as much as it touched mine. What lessons did you learn from Dale's tale? I'd love to hear your thoughts, so please share them in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. And make sure to turn on the notification bell so you'll be the first to see my next story. Your support means the world to me, and I can't wait to share more incredible tales with you.